Hi everyone, my name is Christian Baku from the University of Essex. I am your host for this evening. I would like to introduce to you our new webinar in the series Breaking Business Barriers with Virtual Reality, part of our Space to Grow program. Today's webinar is of course recorded and it will be distributed to you just within a few days of this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask those. We'll be collating all of your questions and answering those towards the end of the webinar. Now, without the further ado, I would like to introduce to you our speaker for today, Bertie Mills. He's a co-founder and the chief operating officer of Virtual Umbrella, presenting to you on how immersive technologies, including virtual reality, can boost your business. So Bertie, please take it away when you're ready.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm just going to click the optimize button here to make sure that it shows the screen in the best way for the recording. So hello everyone. I see a couple of names that I recognize in the participants panel from last time. So thank you to those people for returning, and welcome to the rest of you. So today we're going to be talking about augmented reality and what it can do for your business. Primarily, it's about augmented reality, but I like to touch on immersive technology as a whole. So I'm going to be talking about virtual reality and mixed reality as well. For those of you who attended the previous webinar, we're going to cover a lot of the same topics, but I have a couple of different examples in here as well. So you're welcome to stick along, maybe listen to some stuff again, maybe see some new examples as well. Okay, so let's begin. What is immersive technology? So when we say immersive technology, this sometimes gets coupled with the term XR, and no one's quite sure what XR stands for. It's a bit of an argument between the industry. For some people, it's extended reality with like a hard X. For some people, it's cross reality. And then for other people, X is the mathematical variable. So X could be replaced with anything. But either way, it's easier if we just kind of rise above that conversation and we just accept that XR is the umbrella term for immersive technologies. So on this diagram here, on the left-hand side, you've got VR. So VR is where the objects that you are interacting with are an entirely virtual world. So there's no elements from the real world. It's entirely virtual sounds, virtual objects, virtual beings. Everything that you interact with is usually computer generated. Then we move to augmented reality. So augmented reality is where digital objects are overlaid on top of the real world. I'll talk about this example in further detail later, but think of things like Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go, through your phone's camera, you can see a Pokemon on the pavement, but it doesn't interact with the pavement. It doesn't know where it is in the space. It is just overlaid on top. And then on the far side, we have mixed reality. So mixed reality is where digital elements begin to understand the world around them and they can interact with it. So for example, you can see in this image, the robot is behind the sofa. So the device understands where objects are in the physical space. It knows where distances are, and it knows where the digital object should be and how they should interact with those objects. So in this example, it knows that it needs to hide behind the sofa. So I hope that just gives you a bit of an overview into the main terms that people use and kind of an understanding of what differences are between them. Obviously, there are a lot of like sort of elements in between, and it can be a lot more subtle with the differences, but I try to give like 3 different big examples because I think that's the easiest way for people to kind of understand the technology. The other thing we need to mention is 360 video. So 360 video is where you're put in one perspective normally, and it might be a video of a real world event. But because it's filmed with a 360 camera, they just plonk the 360 camera down, you can see all the way around you. The difference between this and with virtual reality is that you're fixed in one perspective and you have much more of a passive sort of experience. You can't interact with things, you can't walk around, you can't go pick up objects like you could in a virtual reality experience, but it's still really immersive. So for a lot of you, this might potentially be the thing that meets your goals. You might not have to look into virtual reality or augmented reality or mixed reality. So looking at the hardware that's in the space. So for augmented reality, we're looking at devices like the Magic Leap 1 and the Microsoft HoloLens. So the Magic Leap 1 is the headset at the top of the screen, the one that costs £1,860. This was created by a company called Magic Leap. And yeah, they named the device after themselves. This came onto the market maybe about a year ago. It's still fairly new, and the applications for it are still fairly limited. But in terms of the actual hardware itself, it's a really powerful piece of kit for creating augmented reality and mixed reality experiences. The cameras that you can see on the front of it, they're scanning the room and they're always looking around, which means it's very aware of where you are in the space, and it can understand how objects need to react and interact with these things. Excuse me. So the reason there's a plus after the cost is that this is the basic model. If you are working in a large corporate, or you might have a large corporate or a big enterprise client, you're going to need different models of the headsets. You're going to need enterprise models. These come with higher levels of support, extra devices, extra accessories, added security, things like that. But they charge more for it, which is kind of understandable, really. The prices can differ. Sometimes it's like an extra 200, 300 quid. Sometimes it's double the price. And sometimes it's even more, in fact. I'll mention that in a moment. The other device for augmented reality and mixed reality is the HoloLens, the Microsoft HoloLens. So this is the device on the left-hand side, the one that's £2,832. So why is it such an odd number? It's actually $3,000 in the USA. So the number here fluctuates based on the exchange rates. This is the price that it was when I created the presentation. This is another powerful piece of hardware. The picture is actually almost going to be outdated because Microsoft have announced the HoloLens 2, which is their successor to this headset, but it isn't actually on release yet for general customers. Again, it's a really good piece of kit, but it's more expensive, but it's got that Microsoft guarantee that you might not get from a company like Magic Leap. Looking at virtual reality headsets, we have the HTC Vive, which is the blue one. We have the Oculus Quest, which is the black one in the center at £300. And we have the Oculus Go down at the lowest point on the screen at £139. So the Oculus Quest, the £300 one, this headset for enterprise, it's actually $1,000. So if you're buying at enterprise level, you're paying $1,000 per headset. But as part of this, you get things like a kiosk mode. So if you need to give it to your employees, they can't mess around with the settings. They can only use it for specific experiences. You have tracking. You're able to see things like performance. So if you've got like a learning system in place, you can track how your employees do in the VR learning experiences, and you can use that and then put that into their files and stuff like that. So it's a lot of extra things that you get compared to the £300 consumer model. So moving on to software, the main games engines that people use for developing this kind of content, VR, AR, and mixed reality is Unreal Engine and Unity. Additionally, you have the Spark AR Studio, and Microsoft have a suite of products, so things like Visual Studio or their actual mixed reality studio. And just like the other ones, these are other softwares that you can use for creating experiences. So who is the audience for immersive technology? So when we think about the audience for immersive technology, it's essential that we think about the youth of this industry. So whilst this kind of wave of immersive tech has been going on since around 2015, maybe even late 2014, we're actually still quite new. It's still quite a young industry. And Perkins Coie, who are a large law firm out in America, they're based in Silicon Valley. They have a real vested interest in seeing new technology succeed because these startups end up being their clients. So it's up to them to make sure they see success in this space. They do a survey every year where they survey the VR and the AR industry. And in their most recent survey, which came out in 2020, in March 2020, in fact, it's only 2 months old, they found that 46% of their survey respondents admitted that a lack of an established market is a real barrier for our technology. In this same report, they noted that outside of gaming entertainment, the respondents are seeing the most disruption coming from healthcare, medical, manufacturing, and also education, with 38% of the respondents pointing to healthcare and medical devices particularly as ripe sectors for disruption. The final example, I think, that comes from this report is a really nice example of a return on investment, a real proof of this technology working. And that comes from Lockheed Martin. They have an emerging technologies lead. And she noted that they had a 90% reduction in their labor costs when they were using VR and AR for the new Orion spacecraft. And this is due to things like rapid prototyping, being able to quickly change and amend designs rather than having to create full scale or small scale models and then adjust based on those kind of things from there. So another report which we like to reference is PwC's Seeing is Believing report. This came out around August, September time in 2019. So it's still quite an updated and quite a relevant report. And they looked at how VR and AR are going to transform business and the economy. So just for reference here, PwC as a business, they go and they act on slightly different terms to a lot of the other industries or a lot of the other businesses who work in the immersive space. So for PwC, they see virtual reality as like fully virtual stuff, but they see augmented reality as augmented reality and mixed reality. So anything which is like information being overlaid on top of the real world in any way, whether it interacts or it doesn't, they call that augmented reality. And it's just important that I clarify that for you, because otherwise the next couple of slides might just seem like they need more explaining. So in the next 10 years, PwC are predicting that we're going to increase to 1.5 trillion in terms of the impact of VR and AR on the global economy. So the boost to the GDP globally, $1.5 trillion. So it's a hugely significant amount. And as you can see from the graph, this growth is expected to be exponential. This is expected to grow faster and faster over time. Also, we can see that we have comparative economic contributions, and PwC are predicting that augmented reality is going to provide a much larger share than virtual reality. And whilst this may have people thinking, oh, well, I should be looking at augmented reality then, it's important that whilst we understand that these are both complementary solutions, we shouldn't compare them as like rivals. They both have different uses for different purposes, and they're both really, really good when they're applied to the right problem they're trying to solve. And then finally, we have the global impact of VR and AR. So in the next 10 years or so, we're going to see some standard big players, places like China and the USA and Japan and the UK, adopting and embracing immersive technologies. But we're also going to see some slightly surprising results like Finland and the United Arab Emirates on there. And these are countries that PwC are going to predict will be embracing immersive technologies. Final one for you. This has come from Immerse UK. They are the largest membership organization in the UK, specifically tailored to helping companies who are either working in the immersive space or looking at using immersive technology. They've done a report about the immersive economy specifically in the UK. And some statistics from here that might be important for you is noting that 65% of people who responded to this survey found that using immersive technology opened up new markets and sectors to them. And that 47% of them said that this has enabled a widening of their current client base. So it's not just about strengthening and lengthening current client relationships, it's about using this as an opportunity to find new clients as well. So we're going to move on to looking at opportunities within XR. So at this point, I'm going to start giving examples, and we're going to go into a little bit more depth talking about stuff. If at any point you need me to elaborate on something, or you want me to talk about something in more detail, just pop it in the chat or pop it in the Q&A and I can come back to it at the end. So the first example, learning and development. So we're gonna have a little GIF here, and then I'm gonna pop back to this screen before you get frustrated with seeing the same 1 second loop. So there we go, that's a little example. That was a project created by a company called MakeReal based down in Brighton. And the client is Lloyds Bank. The use case is personal resilience and vitality inside of Lloyds banking group. So by using a piece of virtual reality technology, they're able to put their employees into a virtual reality experience where you are an employee and there is a restructuring rumored to be taking place. And you go through the building, you go through the office, you talk to your colleagues, and you see how they react to this news. And as part of the training syllabus, you have to learn about 4 key areas of human behavior, whether people are in their burnout zone, whether they're surviving, whether they're thriving, or whether they're working at high performance, but they're at low energy, which has another term, which I can't remember right now. But being able to identify where in this matrix your staff are helps you to be able to manage them, and not just manage them, but also collaborate with your own staff. You don't just have to be a manager. Like, sometimes we all have to work with our colleagues, and we have to know how to react to them and when they need help and how we can help them, or whether they've got too much, they don't have enough work and we need to give them more and they need to be given a further opportunity to thrive. And this is what Lloyds Banking Group are using virtual reality technology for. The next example I'm going to give you is about regulation and health and safety. So you can see here, this is climbing a ladder of a wind farm. So this is created for a company called Ørsted, who are a Danish energy company. They're also one of the most globally or climate friendly companies in the world. And again, this one was created by Makereal, based down in Brighton. And whilst the last one was around learning, like soft skills and empathy and that kind of thing, this one is much more around hard skills, climbing poles, digging holes, things that you can do out in the field, but there are safety factors and things you need to think about. By doing basic training for the staff in virtual reality, having them climb the ladders, going up into the wind turbines and doing some general assessments in there, it means there's less time that they need to spend doing training out in the field. So when they do training out in the field, they need to take a turbine offline for the day. They need to get the boat to go out there. They need to take all their staff off jobs for that day so they can do this training. But being able to do the basic stuff in virtual reality means that there's less cost and there's less time dedicated to it. Collaboration. This is an example which I've recently added based on a piece of software called Spatial, which was released open source and free last week. So this is actually PwC's VR and AR team, which you can see currently using it. So the software, you put your headshot in, and then it uses that to create a virtual avatar of yourself. And using either an augmented reality headset, a virtual reality headset, or your desktop PC, you can then interact with the avatars of your team members, and you can create models and you can talk to each other. And when you talk, it notices that your mouth is moving, and it makes your avatar's mouth move to reflect this. So it feels a little bit more human as well. If you're using it in augmented reality, it means you can have people in the office. You can have virtual beings in the office around you. Although if you are at home, it does feel a little bit like your house is haunted. But, you know, at least it's a friendly face that's haunting you. Moving on to marketing and PR. This is an example I like to give because not only is it a nice novel use of augmented reality technology, it's also a really smart use of understanding a company's own assets and using them for their own purpose. So let's get this on to play. So here you have Shazam, which is owned by Amazon. It's part of Amazon Holdings. And you open up this, this advert, which is in The Guardian. And using Shazam, it notices that it's an Audible advert, and it brings up audio suggestions for audiobooks. And Audible is an Amazon product as well, or it's an Amazon company. So they're using an Amazon product to promote another Amazon product. So there's no licensing or big concerns in there for the company. It's all just money going back into the same company. And then with this, they're able to sell free trials for Audible. And then as you go through the book, or as you go through the magazine, different articles suggest different stories for you to read. So it's a way to find the books that people are interested in as well. Let's just move on to the next slide. So looking at retail and consumer, for these videos, I'm going to be tabbing out over to YouTube. So if that doesn't work for you, let me know, hammer that in the chat so I can see. So the first example is Place by IKEA, and this is from 2017. There we go. It's not you, it's you. Here we go. So you can see here you've got a standard living room at home. And using augmented reality technology, you can place IKEA furniture in there. Let's make this full screen for you. So it scans your room using Apple's AR kit technology, which is 3D sensing inside of their phones. And where IKEA have the digital models of all of their furniture for where you can do 360 views online. It means they've got what's called a digital twin of all of their assets, all of their furniture. And using that, they can then place that into a games engine with all the right measurements, and then they can use that to place virtual furniture in your home. So, you know, you can see what it would look like, and then the goal for them is obviously that you end up buying it. So the next example is 19 Crimes. So this is a wine company, and it's a specific brand. So their brand is all about these famous criminals, people who have committed crimes, and their faces are on the bottles. And as you can see here, when you put the augmented reality app up to it, the faces come to life and they tell you their story. So it adds a level of storytelling, and it creates a conversation piece to have in your house if you're a wine connoisseur or you're someone who's interested in that kind of thing. Looking towards entertainment. So this is created by Niantic, who are the people behind Pokemon Go. And this is their latest, their latest game. And it's Harry Potter Wizards Unite. So you see here, within your phone, you have these digital elements overlaid on top of the real world, and then there's gameplay elements in there as well, and you're able to collaborate with other people and get involved from there. Whilst we're on this topic, talking about the stuff that Niantic are doing, I want to show their newest technology, which they literally announced last week. So I've put it into the presentation here. And they call this reality blending. And this is, so in the past where we had augmented reality, so you see that the Pikachu isn't moving, but it's planted in the space, but it doesn't really move. And it doesn't understand the elements around it. You see there, it's just hovering, or it hovers on top of the flower pots. It goes on front of the flower pots and stuff like that. But with the new technology, with the occlusion technology, it knows the flower pots are there, and it understands the distance with the objects, and it can then make it seem as if this Pikachu is a little bit more based in the real world. It reacts a bit better to things. So here, we'll just show this example as well. This might look a little bit laggy on your screen, but if it does, I can send you you'll get the presentation later anyway. So you see here that it feels like they're a lot more embedded in the real world. Okay, so we're going to move on to healthcare now. So this is augmented reality displays being used by Philips inside of hospitals as part of their Azurion project, which is a much larger program of change that they're working on. So moving back over to YouTube for this one. So they're using the HoloLens 2 inside of medical centers and in their innovation centers. And here they're able to pull out information, and they're able to have digital displays showing the information that they require. This means that the surgeons can spend more time looking at their patients. It means they have the important information that they need in front of them at all times. And what I think personally is the most important part of this is that there's nothing physical for them to touch, which means there's less chance of any contamination with the surgeons. And they can just spend that time working on their patients. So when we do these webinars and these workshops, back in before the coronavirus, in the pre-COVID times, before the inside times, we would talk about some examples like we just did, and then we'd have use cases where we'd go into even more detail, and you'd be able to try the experiences for yourself, and you'd be able to get a bit more of your hands on with them. Obviously, we can't do that now, so instead, I'm just going to give some more examples and try and go into a little bit more depth, talking about the challenge, the solution, and then how they measured the return on investment on it. It's important to think about as well, as with any project or any software development you're doing, you've always got to think about the return on investment, but this is not going to be exactly the same for every project. Your success metrics are going to be different. So it's ensuring that you're setting the right success metrics, and then you're then measuring your return on investment based on those. So the first example here is DHL. So we're going back to YouTube. So these are Vuzix smart glasses, and they use these inside of DHL's warehouses, and they give them to their warehouse pickers. So they scan their little ID card, It says, hello, Ron. And from here, they then scan their manifest for the day, which is their list of tasks, their things they need to pick. And it shows them exactly where it is in the warehouse. It guides them to it. And then when they get there, they scan the item, or the headset then scans the item as well. So what this does is, the challenge is that they needed to find a way to make their staff even more efficient whilst reducing the actual mental load for their staff. So their staff could focus on doing their jobs right instead of having to think about exactly where they're going. And the solution they came up with was this augmented reality display, which tells them where the products are in the warehouse, how they should go collect it, and exactly what the quantity is. So what this does is the return investment here is that it reduces the mental load, because the pickers aren't having to figure out where they're going. They don't have to figure out exactly what they're picking. It then reduces human error because it scans the barcodes of the boxes, so it can check that against the manifest to ensure the pickers picked up the right thing. And then finally, it just makes things much more efficient, because where there's less mental load, where there's less human error, it means that everything's happening a lot faster and with a much smaller failure rate. So the next example, I give this one now because this is completely different. This is an augmented reality project called Multiverse by a company called Curoscope. Here we go, let's get this one to load as well. So these are interactive posters, and you can buy these in the Science Museum now. And when you hover the app, or when you hold the app on your phone, you hover it over the poster, the objects come out of the poster and they come to life in your living room. So this is about teaching people about this one's about teaching kids about Earth. So understanding the layers, the magma, the core, the crust. And it's about creating a whole new way of engaging kids in education. So for this one, this wasn't about making money or driving efficiencies. The return investment here for them was reviews and testimonials from teachers and from parents who said, oh yes, my kids really enjoyed the way they learned, and they've been talking about it ever since, and seeing that this is a new way of learning for them, and that's where they're seeing their return investment here. So another one for you is Ørsted again. So another one from the Green Energy Company. This is called Space Safari, and this was a 360 film. And here's just a little clip of it. It was a 360 film where you put the headset on and you were in the UK, you're in the Lake District, and there was a voiceover coming from Helen Sharman, the astronaut, and she's saying, isn't it beautiful here? Look at all the trees, look at the plants. Isn't your home wonderful? And then you zoom out and you go up into space and you see the International Space Station, and then suddenly you're so far back, you get the overview effect, which is a term coined by astronauts, which is where you can see this tiny blue dot, which is where you've come from, and you realize just how small the Earth is and just how fragile it is, and that we have to look after this precious blue dot in this ocean of nothingness. And the idea behind this piece was to provoke people into doing more about climate change and taking more action about climate change. So this was unveiled at the Climate Summit in New York back in September of 2019. So the return investment for this was that they got a massive amount of climate leaders and industry leaders to put on the VR headsets, because they need to find a new way to engage them. So by using the headsets, they're able to engage the climate leaders and the industry leaders, and trying to provoke this emotional impact in them. So people who may have already been aware of the climate troubles, but are attending to learn more, this was a way to leave them with an emotional impact from it. So moving into getting started with XR. I'm really sorry, my chair is really squeaky. I keep leaning back despite the fact I'm telling myself not to. So getting started with XR or with immersive technology. So the first step, as with anything, is to get educated. You shouldn't just be listening to me and then going off and making something. You should be reading articles, looking at research papers, depending on what budget you've got, maybe even buying research papers from some of the dedicated research companies out there like Artillery or VR Intelligence. Following immersive people on social media. Seeing lots of examples and seeing the perspective from other people will try and broaden your perspective a bit about what is possible with immersive technologies. And then hopefully, once you've had your perspective broadened, you've seen a lot of different examples, you've had some ideas about things you could do, then you can move into identifying a use case. And this is finding a challenge within your business or within your organization that you think might be a good example where immersive technology can make life better and can make life easier. So this is where you'll be defining your success objectives. So it might be something like, we're a logistics company, we have a warehouse. We know that it takes a long time for our staff to go and pick the things because they need to find out exactly where it is before they can pick the stock. So you might be saying, okay, we want to create an augmented reality thing and our success metrics are going to be around errors and speed. And then once you've got those success metrics, that's going to kind of be what guides your whole development from that point on. These are like your pillars or your foundations, because that's going to guide all the software and everything you build from that point onwards. Does it meet these two criteria? Is it making things more efficient and with less errors? And so at this point, you create a test experience. So this is commissioning a small build from a developer or a small agency and using this to test your hypothesis. So asking them to create something based on what you're thinking and see if it does make things more efficient and if it does reduce human error. Because once you've proven it, then you know you can fully commit to a larger rollout and to a larger development of software. The whole time you're doing this, it's also important to measure and track effectively. Continually measuring reminds you that you've got your success objectives in mind, and it ensures that you're always measuring against them and that you're making sure that things don't go off the road too much. But by being able to track effectively, you can also see if it's achieving other things too, if it's having other successful outcomes that you might not have predicted to begin with, or whether there are certain things where it's actually causing more problems, and then weighing up the benefits versus the disbenefits of the technology. So it's important to always be measuring and always be tracking your stuff. And it's important to make sure you're always tracking against those success metrics, because when you've created your use case or your business case, when you've got that budget signed off by someone, they're going to want to see a result. They're going to want to see either success or failure on the project. And if you don't have any success objectives, you're going to have to try and create those after you've created the experience. In which case, you know for a fact you're going to end up creating success matrix that you know you can prove, which will defeat the object of the innovation in the first place. So that's just kind of my 4 steps on how you should be really getting started with this stuff. But if you have any more questions on this or you want me to elaborate at all, just go into the Q&A or go into the chat and I can answer those questions at the end. So I'm going to give you some resources to look at as well. So for identifying your use case, there's a company called MakeReal, the ones who I mentioned earlier, who created the work for Lloyd's and created the work for Orsted. On the front page of their website, about halfway down, there is a link to a use case identification worksheet. And this is a series of boxes on an A4 sheet of paper, which asks you questions. And you fill in these questions, and then by the end of it, you've got a fully fleshed out A4 sheet. And you could take this to a development company, or you could take it to MakeReal if you were that impressed with their worksheet. You could take it to them, and from this point, they'd be able to build you that first test experience, that first demonstrator to prove your hypothesis from there. So this is like almost like this is my idea, let's make it happen. If you want to be a bit more impartial and you want to find production companies, like don't just go with MakeReal. Like we said before, get educated first. For finding production companies, you're welcome to come talk to us. We can recommend people based on the kind of thing you think you want to do. We also recommend that you speak to AIXR. This is the Academy for International Extended Reality. So they're another membership group. They've got like some really big names, people who are real proven innovators and virtual reality and augmented reality developers. And then also Immerse UK. So Immerse UK is UK centric, and they've got a lot of members as well, and they're always welcome and they're always helping people to identify who they need to be working with. Finally, you might already be like a software development company, or you might have a software development team. It might be you just need some extra expertise to join the team in order to create something. For this, we recommend a tool called Blend Market. So this is created by a company called Blend Media. And the Blend Market is somewhere where you can create your own profile and then upload your brief and upload your budget saying what you want to create, how long they have, and then go into more detail and how much money you've got to do it. And then they can respond to you saying, I can do it, but it's going to cost more, or I need these questions answered, and then I can do it, things like that. So this adds a little bit of safety to both sides of the transaction, with Blend Market in the middle as almost an escrow service and discovery service. They'll keep you a bit more protected in case you end up with a bad freelancer, and it keeps the freelancers protected in case they end up with a company that's not willing to pay. The good thing about this is it's not just freelancers who use it, you also have small creative teams looking at it as well. So don't be afraid to put a larger brief on there as well, because you might find a small 3 or 4 person creative team who'd be willing to take that on. So let's look at what's next. This is looking towards the future, both near term and short term. So short term, 5G, COVID-19, and the immersive industry, sorry. So with the lockdown, what we've noticed is there's a lot of people who are using virtual reality for exercise. So things like Beat Saber on the left-hand side, things that keep you active, keep you moving, but it's in a fun and entertaining way. I've seen examples of people who have lost 5 or 6 stone in the last 6 weeks just by eating healthy and playing Beat Saber. There's also things like meditation applications where life right now is quite stressful. There's a lot going on. We need a space, a tranquil space. And finally, the bottom right, the image from AltSpace VR. So this is a social platform in virtual reality. So this is a place where you can put your VR headset on, you can socialize with friends, meet new people. They have little events, they have yoga groups, they have meditation groups. There's all sorts of things going on inside of this social space. So people who are pining for a bit more interaction, some friendship, they're able to look at things like social VR spaces. So looking towards the future more, in the next year or so, these are the augmented reality viewers that we're going to see hitting the market. We've got some names that you might have heard of, like Panasonic, and then we've got some established names in the immersive industry like Nreal and Pico and Oppo. And then there's some other companies there who are mostly Chinese companies who are working in the space as well. And as you can see from this, whilst people know what they want to do with augmented reality and mixed reality, like they know how to do it, people aren't quite sure on exactly the best way to deliver these experiences. So whether it's through a mobile phone or whether it's through eyewear. You have things that look more like virtual reality viewers, like the 3 glasses or the Pico. And then you have things that are a bit more strange, like the Panasonic, which looks like a Willy Wonka glasses. And then you have things that are where they're just trying to be sunglasses or they're trying to be glasses, like the Nreal or the Shadow Creator. So it's a real open market right now for innovation and people trying new things, because no one's quite sure what the best form factor is or the best device for delivering these experiences. Of course, the big name coming into the space is going to be Apple. Apple working on augmented reality displays. This is just a render created by a fan. We still have no idea when Apple glasses are going to be coming out. And officially, they haven't made any statements saying that they are working on these either, but they're hiring a lot of people and lots of people are talking about it, which suggests that there's a lot of rumors spinning around and they're coming from people who know insiders at Apple. So I expect to see Apple glasses coming out in either 2021 or 2022. We're also going to see mixed reality and augmented reality interfaces being added to physical products. So here, this is a fan-made example for the Apple credit card, using augmented reality to have a new way to interface with your bank statements. Instead of using an app, you can just do it all straight from your phone. So imagine you don't use your phone anymore as much, you're using your Apple glasses. Perhaps the Apple glasses will note and register and understand that that's an Apple card and be able to identify it. And then from there, they can bring up these displays for you. So that's everything I have to talk about today. As I said before, if you have any questions, any queries, you just want to chat, just pop it in the chat function or pop it in the Q&A. And I'm now open for questions. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So thank you for that. I actually have a question myself, so I hope you don't mind that, and I hope I won't be sweeping you up with the broadness of my questions. But
of course.
I'm wondering, you mentioned prototyping. Is there currently any software? Because where I'm based in the Innovation Center. We rub shoulders with quite a few businesses. Some of them already want to use the VR technology. Now, Is there any software out there already for prototyping tools? Because obviously for now on computers, you do get that's a bit advanced. Do you get the same on VR side?
Yeah, so there are rapid prototyping tools out there. There's nothing quite as advanced as, computer-aided design as CAD, but companies like Ford are using Gravity Sketch. So Gravity Sketch it was originally designed to be a creativity tool, and then the people who are making it realized that industrial design is much more profitable and much more lucrative. So Gravity Sketch is my prime example there. And then there's also some more creative tools like Tilt Brush by Google, which people also use for sketching out ideas and creating more of that early stage ideas on paper prototyping.
And does all of these function in actual VR, and are they widely available?
Yes.
Okay.
So Gravity Sketch, you can just buy it on the VR stores. So on the Oculus store or the Steam store, you can just buy it on there. So if you have a VR headset, you can try Gravity Sketch today.
Well, okay, so I believe with that, I don't think we've got any more questions. So on that note, oh wait, let's see. I think we might have a question. Very interesting.
Oh, we got a really good question from Steve.
So he mentions that what you mentioned was very interesting, the fact that you mentioned the return on investment, but he can't see how the outlay can stack up with the return, especially for small business or education institutions. Can you see the question, Bertie?
Yes. Yeah, no, I can see the question. So, yeah, you mentioned you can't see how like the initial investment could stack up with the return for small businesses or for educational institutions. It's a good point. And sometimes it can't. Sometimes the answer is that it can't. And in that case, it's waiting for this technology to become cheaper and more widely available. But in other times, it's a case of sometimes the return on investment isn't so tangible as making dollars back. I think probably the best examples I can give of things like this are Curoscope's efforts. So Curoscope with the posters that I showed you, the augmented reality posters. Educational establishments aren't creating the augmented reality themselves. Instead, they're buying in these posters and they're buying in the other augmented reality educational tools that Curoscope do. So the only investment for them is the purchase of the equipment. And then they already have iPads and they already have phones as part of their stock. So they're repurposing items they already have in order to adapt their syllabus to fit in the augmented reality experiences and stuff like that. In terms of small businesses as well, I think that unless you have a really relevant use case, so say something like manufacturing or logistics, it might just be a case of waiting maybe till next year or the year after when off-the-shelf solutions become a lot more prevalent. The company I mentioned earlier, MakeReal, I keep mentioning their name, they are working on a series of off-the-shelf solutions. So things like banksman training for heavy goods vehicles. So you spend the $1,000 or the £1,000 on a VR headset, then you buy a license to their banksman training, and then you can train as many people as you want in basic training for moving heavy goods vehicles. And you're doing that in a safe environment as well. So rather than having people out in the field, learning maneuvers, being susceptible to injuries if they forget something or if they panic, instead they've got time to learn those basic maneuvers, get a bit of muscle memory before they go out into the field. I hope that answers your question, Steve. If you want more context at all or anything, just send me a follow-up question or you can email me afterwards.
We also have another question from Nikolay, and that is, what platform do you recommend would be better, Unity or the Unreal Engine? Which one is more future-proof?
So Unreal and Unity are both really future-proof. They're both subject to a lot of innovation all the time, and both companies are very cash rich and they're always focusing on innovation and pushing the platforms forwards. For beginners, for people who are starting with this, Unity is definitely the best bet because Unity is much more friendly to non-developers or people who are learning to become developers, whereas the Unreal Engine is more advanced. But then as part of it being more advanced, it's things like Unreal provides a much better visual experience. You can create much more beautiful experiences using the Unreal Engine compared to Unity. So it's that kind of offset of what you're really looking for. Unity has a lot of learning resources available on their websites, and they have a whole evangelism team dedicated to preaching the message of Unity and helping show people or helping teach people what else they can do with it.
Okay. And then we've got another question from Steve again, and that is, are there any ready-to-go packages for the education sector? And I believe in particular, he's referring to business studies.
So there are companies working on ready-to-go packages. I'll be honest with you, right now, off the top of my head, I can't remember their names, because as soon as you try to access that part of your brain, right, the names all disappear from it. There are companies out there doing it. I will have to follow up with you to suggest them afterwards, because I'll have to have a look on my emails or something to remember their names. So please fire me an email or tweet us or something, and I'll get in touch.
Okay, so we'll just leave a few more seconds just for anyone to ask any other questions if they do have those. Just a few seconds. Okay, and I believe with this we can conclude the webinar. So I would like to thank everyone for attending. Please do check out our Eventbrite page. We've got more webinars coming up. I'm sure if you found this interesting, we'll have more on this topic as well as a range of others. We will also be posting out post-webinar surveys to you. Do fill those in. Again, very valuable for us to get the feedback from you. It helps us to improve the experience that we deliver to you. And for, I believe we don't have any pre-booked one-to-ones, but yeah, do sign up to those as well. So on that note, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Thank you.
Cheers.